I walked into my in-laws' house, expecting a family gathering. But what I stumbled upon shattered my world, my husband, laughing intimately with another woman on the couch. So, picture this. It's a lazy Saturday afternoon in Brooklyn, and I'm chilling at my apartment, catching up on some Netflix, when I get this random text from my BL, brother-in-law. He's like, "Hey, you should come over to Ma and Pa's place. We're having a little family gathering." My BL, Jack, 34M, is one of those guys who's always been pretty chill and fun to be around, so I thought, why not? For context, I'm Sarah, 29F, and I've been married to Mike, 31M, for about 3 years now. We met in college, hit it off immediately, and it's been a pretty smooth ride so far, or so I thought. Mike's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, have always been super welcoming and treated me like one of their own. They live in this charming brownstone house in Park Slope, where all the family gatherings usually take place. I get ready and head over, but something feels off. I don't know why, maybe it's just one of those gut feelings, you know? Anyway, I brush it off and make my way to the Thompsons. When I get there, the door's unlocked, which is kind of weird because they always lock it. I walk in, and the house is unusually quiet. Normally, there's some hustle and bustle, especially if Jack and Mike's younger sister, Emma, 28F, are around. I head towards the living room, and that's when I hear it. Muffled voices and laughter? I step in and see Mike sitting on the couch, way too close to some woman I don't recognize. They're laughing and chatting like they're the only ones in the world. My heart sinks. The woman is stunning, probably around Mike's age, with long brown hair and a laugh that could probably melt ice. I clear my throat, and they both snap their heads up. Mike's face goes pale, and he looks like a deer caught in headlights. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" he stammers. "Jack invited me," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on?" The woman stands up awkwardly and introduces herself as Lily, 32F, an old friend of Mike's from college. She extends her hand, but I ignore it. I can feel the anger bubbling up, but I don't want to make a scene. Mike starts babbling about how they just ran into each other recently and decided to catch up. It's a load of crap, and I can tell. "Where's everyone else?" I ask, trying to divert the tension. "Oh, they went out to grab some groceries," Mike says quickly, avoiding my gaze. Just then, Jack walks in with a bag of chips and a six-pack of beer. "Hey, Sarah, you made it!" He looks between me, Mike, and Lily, and I can see the gears turning in his head. "Yeah, I did," I reply, forcing a smile. "Nice to see you, Jack." Lily excuses herself, saying she has to leave, and Mike walks her to the door. When he comes back, he looks like he's been put through the ringer. Jack, ever the oblivious one, starts talking about the Knicks game and cracks open a beer. The rest of the evening is a blur. I keep replaying that moment in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Mike tries to act normal, but I can see the guilt written all over his face. When we finally get home, I confront him. He insists that nothing happened, that they're just friends. But I don't buy it. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about all the times Mike was late coming home or had to work late. Were those all lies? Was I just being paranoid? I had to know the truth, but I wasn't sure how to go about it. The next few days are torture. Mike acts like everything is fine, but I'm distant. I start snooping, checking his phone when he's in the shower, looking through his emails. I feel like a crazy person, but I need answers. And then, I find it. A series of texts between Mike and Lily. Flirty, suggestive texts. It's like a punch to the gut. I confront him again, this time with the evidence. He breaks down, admits that he's been seeing Lily for a few months now. He swears it was just an emotional affair, that they never slept together. But at this point, I don't believe anything he says. I'm devastated, but I'm also angry. Angry at him for betraying me, angry at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. We have a huge fight. I tell him to pack his things and leave. He begs for another chance, but I can't even look at him. I call my best friend Kate, 30F, and she comes over to help me through it. She brings wine, and we spend the night talking and crying. The next day, Mike moves out. He goes to stay with his parents, which is another blow because I used to think of their place as a safe haven. Now, it's tainted with memories of his betrayal. I'm not sure where to go from here. Part of me wants to fight for our marriage, but another part of me thinks it's over. I guess only time will tell. Update 1. The confrontation. All right, folks, so it's been about a month since I kicked Mike out. I've been trying to pick up the pieces and move on with my life, but it's been tough. Kate has been a lifesaver, always checking in on me and dragging me out of the house when I just want to wallow in my misery. Last weekend, Kate convinced me to go to this new bar that opened up in Williamsburg. We had a few drinks, danced a bit, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. But as luck would have it, that's when things took another unexpected turn. I was at the bar, waiting for another round of drinks when I overheard a conversation between two women next to me. They were talking about Lily. One of them, let's call her Jenna, 33F, was saying how she couldn't believe Lily was still seeing that married guy. My ears perked up, and I couldn't help but eavesdrop. Yeah, she's been bragging about it, Jenna said. She even said his wife found out, but he's still with her. Can you believe that? My heart sank. So, Mike was still seeing Lily, and he had the nerve to lie about it. I couldn't let this go. I had to confront him and get some closure. The next day, I decided to go over to Mike's parents' house. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. When I got there, Mrs. Thompson answered the door. She looked surprised to see me, but welcomed me in. Hi, Sarah. How are you holding up? She asked, her eyes full of concern. I'm all right, Mrs. Thompson. Is Mike here? I need to talk to him, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She nodded and led me to the living room where Mike was sitting on the couch, looking like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw me, he stood up, looking both surprised and guilty. Sarah, what are you doing here? He asked. We need to talk, I said firmly. I know you're still seeing Lily. His face fell, and he looked down at his feet. It's not what you think, he muttered. Then what is it, Mike? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you lied to me again, I snapped. Mrs. Thompson looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. I'll give you two some privacy, she said, leaving the room. Look, Sarah, I screwed up, okay? But I swear nothing physical happened between us, Mike said, desperation in his voice. I don't care, Mike. You still betrayed me. You lied to my face and made me feel like I was crazy, I said, my voice breaking. He reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away. I'm sorry, Sarah. I don't know what else to say. Save your apologies, Mike. I just need to know one thing. Are you still seeing her? I asked, my eyes boring into his. He hesitated, and that was all the answer I needed. I turned on my heel and walked out of the house, tears streaming down my face. Mrs. Thompson tried to stop me, but I just shook my head and kept going. When I got home, I collapsed on the couch, feeling completely drained. Kate came over later, and I told her everything. She was furious on my behalf and insisted that I deserved better. A few days later, I received a message from Mrs. Thompson. She wanted to meet up and talk. I was hesitant, but I agreed. We met at a small cafe in the neighborhood. Sarah, I just wanted to apologize for everything that's happened, she said, looking genuinely remorseful. I had no idea Mike was still seeing Lily. If I had known, I would have put a stop to it. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson, but it's not your fault. Mike made his choices, and now he has to live with the consequences, I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. She nodded, tears in her eyes. You're right. I just want you to know that you're still part of this family, no matter what happens between you and Mike. Her words meant a lot, but it didn't change the fact that my marriage was in shambles. I knew I had a long road ahead of me, but at least I had the support of my friends and family. For now, I'm focusing on myself and trying to rebuild my life. Maybe one day, I'll find someone who truly values and respects me. But until then, I'm taking it one day at a time. Update 2. Alright, so it's been a couple of months since the last update. I've been trying to rebuild my life and focus on myself. Therapy has helped a lot, and Kate continues to be my rock. I've also started seeing my friends more and even picked up a new hobby, kickboxing. It's been a great way to channel my anger and frustration. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you when you least expect it. Last weekend, I decided to go for a walk in Prospect Park. It was a beautiful day, and I needed some fresh air. As I was strolling along, I ran into Jack and his wife, Laura, 32F. They were having a picnic with their 2 kids. I hadn't seen them much since everything went down with Mike, so it was a bit awkward at first. "Hey, Sarah!" Jack called out, waving me over. "Come join us!" I hesitated for a moment but decided to go. It felt nice to be around familiar faces. We chatted for a while, and it almost felt like old times. Laura could sense my discomfort and tried to lighten the mood with stories about their kids' antics. After a while, Laura took the kids to the playground, leaving Jack and me alone. He looked at me with a serious expression. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about Mike," he said. I tensed up. "What about him?" "I know what he did was unforgivable, and I'm not trying to excuse his behavior," Jack started. "But I think there's more to the story, something you should know." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "What do you mean?" Jack took a deep breath. "Mike's been struggling, Sarah. He's been dealing with depression and some serious issues at work. He didn't handle things the right way, and he made a huge mistake with Lily. But he's been seeing a therapist and trying to get his life back on track." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him, but another part of me was still furious. "That doesn't change what he did, Jack. He lied to me and betrayed my trust." "I know," Jack said, nodding. "I just thought you should know that he's trying to make amends. He's asked about you a lot, wondering how you're doing." I sighed. "I appreciate you telling me, Jack, but I need to focus on myself right now. Maybe in the future, we can talk, but I'm not ready yet." Jack nodded, understanding. "Take all the time you need, Sarah. Just know that we're here for you no matter what." As I walked away from the park, I couldn't shake the conversation from my mind. Was it possible that Mike was genuinely trying to change? Did I even care? A few days later, I got another surprise. Mrs. Thompson called and asked if I could come over for dinner. I was hesitant, but she sounded so sincere that I agreed. When I arrived, she greeted me with a warm hug. "I've missed you, dear," she said, leading me to the dining room. To my surprise, Mr. Thompson was there too, looking as stoic as ever. "Hello, Sarah," he said with a nod. "Glad you could join us." Dinner was a bit awkward at first, but Mrs. Thompson did her best to keep the conversation flowing. Halfway through the meal, she cleared her throat and looked at me seriously. "Sarah, we wanted to talk to you about Mike," she began. "We know he hurt you deeply, and we don't expect you to forgive him. But we also know that he's been trying to make things right." Mr. Thompson nodded. "He's been attending therapy regularly and has even joined a support group for people dealing with infidelity. He's trying to understand why he did what he did and how he can be a better person." I took a deep breath. "I appreciate you telling me this, but I'm still not sure what you want me to do." "We're not asking for anything," Mrs. Thompson said gently. "We just wanted you to know that Mike is trying. We love you like a daughter, Sarah, and we want you to be happy, whether that's with Mike or on your own." Their words touched me more than I expected. It felt good to know that I still had their support, even if things were complicated with Mike. The next day, I received a message from Mike. It was the first time he had reached out directly since I kicked him out. He asked if we could meet for coffee, just to talk. I debated for a long time before finally agreeing. We met at a small cafe near my apartment. Mike looked nervous, and I could tell he had lost weight. He fidgeted with his coffee cup before finally speaking. "Sarah, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it," he started. "I just wanted to apologize again and let you know that I'm trying to become a better person. I'm seeing a therapist and working on my issues, I looked at him, feeling a mix of emotions. Mike, I appreciate that you're trying to change, but you really hurt me. I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were. I understand, he said quietly. I just wanted you to know that I'm committed to making things right, even if it's too late for us. We talked for a while longer, and it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I still didn't know what the future held, but at least we were finally having an honest conversation. As I walked home, I felt a strange sense of peace. Maybe, just maybe, we could both find a way to heal and move forward, whether that was together or apart. Only time would tell. Update 3. It's been 6 months since Mike and I had that coffee, and I think it's time for another update. Life has a funny way of moving on, even when you feel like you're stuck in a never-ending loop. For a while, I kept myself busy with work, friends, and kickboxing. It was my way of coping, and it worked to some extent. But there's only so long you can avoid dealing with your feelings. After our coffee, Mike and I decided to take things slow. We started by attending therapy sessions separately and then eventually together. It was awkward at first, but having a neutral third party helped us communicate better. We talked about everything, our issues, the betrayal, and where we saw ourselves in the future. Therapy wasn't a magical fix, but it helped me understand why things happened the way they did. Mike had his issues, but I also realized I had been neglecting my own needs and not communicating effectively in our marriage. It was a hard pill to swallow, but necessary for my own growth. One of the biggest surprises came from an unlikely source, Lily. I ran into her at a bookstore one day. She looked just as surprised to see me as I was to see her. We stood there in an awkward silence before she finally spoke. "Sarah, can we talk?" she asked, her voice tentative. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave, but another part was curious. "All right," I said, crossing my arms. We found a quiet corner and sat down. Lily looked nervous, and I could see the guilt written all over her face. "I owe you an apology," she began. "I never meant to come between you and Mike. When we reconnected, I didn't know he was married. By the time I found out, I was already in too deep." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Why didn't you end it when you found out?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I wish I had," Lily admitted. "But I was selfish and caught up in my own feelings. It was wrong, and I'm truly sorry." We talked for a while longer, and surprisingly, it felt good to finally hear her side of the story. It didn't make what happened okay, but it gave me some closure. I left the bookstore feeling lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Back in therapy, I shared the encounter with my therapist, who encouraged me to keep focusing on my own healing. Mike and I continued our sessions, and slowly, we started to rebuild our trust. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I wanted to give up, but we kept pushing forward. One day, Mike suggested we take a trip to the Catskills, a place we used to love visiting before everything fell apart. I was hesitant at first, but decided to give it a try. We spent a weekend hiking, talking, and just being in each other's company without the pressure of everyday life. It was the first time in a long time that I felt a glimmer of hope. During one of our hikes, we stopped at a beautiful overlook. The view was breathtaking, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Mike turned to me, looking more serious than I'd seen him in a while. "Sarah, I know I've made so many mistakes, and I don't expect you to forget them," he said, his voice steady. "But I love you, and I'm willing to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of your trust. Will you give me another chance?" Tears filled my eyes as I looked at him. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew in my heart that I still loved him. "Yes," I whispered, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. "But we have to take it one day at a time." We hugged, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was a new beginning. We returned to Brooklyn with a renewed sense of purpose, committed to working on our marriage and ourselves. Over the next few months, things slowly started to improve. We continued therapy, spent more quality time together, and rebuilt our connection. It was a long road, and there were still bumps along the way, but we were both committed to making it work. Mike's parents, especially Mrs. Thompson, were incredibly supportive. They welcomed me back into their home with open arms, and it felt good to be part of the family again. Even Jack and Laura were there for us, offering encouragement and understanding. One evening, as we were sitting on the couch, Mike turned to me with a smile. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a beautiful bracelet with a delicate charm. "It's a reminder," he said softly, "of how far we've come and how much further we can go." I put it on, feeling a sense of hope and optimism for the first time in a long time. Our journey wasn't over, but we were in it together, ready to face whatever came our way. So, here I am, sharing my story with you all. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, but I've learned so much about myself and what it means to truly forgive and heal. Life isn't perfect, and neither are we, but sometimes love is worth fighting for. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice along the way. Your words meant more than you could ever know. Here's to new beginnings and the strength to keep moving forward.